In today's video, we're talking about the huge SteamOS update that just dropped. It's bringing along new features for the Steam Deck and getting ready for the Steam Machine. And after that, I've completed my second playthrough of Resident Evil Requiem on the Steam Deck, so here are my settings for 30 FPS and 40 FPS. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. I hope you are having a great week playing a ton of video games. I really want to get 100% completion in Resident Evil Requiem. I'm doing my third playthrough on casual. I have to beat it in 4 hours. I have to beat it without healing, and I have to beat it without extracting blood. So I figured the casual run would be good for that. I also missed 2 Mr. Raccoon statues. I don't know how. So I also have to manage a guide the entire time I'm playing through. But that's what I've got going on. Let me know what you're playing down in the comments below. But with the intro out of the way, let's get into the first news story here. This is a meaty one. We just got a brand new Steam Deck update, and it's been a while since we got any updates. So they packed in a ton of features with this one and a bunch of bug fixes as well. The first thing they added is the ability to control notifications for when you get an achievement. So they're called toasts, but what those are those little notification boxes that pop up in the bottom right hand side of the screen whenever someone comes online. You have achievement progress, you get an achievement. I guess you can control those now like you can all the other ones. I don't know why, but I didn't know this was missing in the first place, so I'm glad it's been added back in if it was taken away. Weird thing to put at the very top of the update, but you know, they got to do what they got to do. They also went back and updated the login screen, so this is getting ready for Steam Machine for sure. I don't know anyone who locks their Steam Deck screen because you can just get around it most of the time by wiping the Steam Deck, so it doesn't really protect you all that much, and I don't know what people would be keeping on their Steam Deck where they would have to keep it locked, you know? Like, what are you hiding? What are you hiding? So they basically merged the two options they have because they were both doing the same thing. So like it was before login or on system wake, and those are technically the same thing. So now if you flip it on, anytime you turn on the screen on your Steam Deck, you're going to see the login screen. Eventually that'll work on Steam Machine as well. Useful feature. You know, you want to lock your stuff down more on the Steam Machine, I would guess, because you're probably going to be using desktop mode a lot more than on the Steam Deck. Like I use desktop mode to install ROMs and update things in the background. That's pretty much it. Or share recordings, because you have to do that from the desktop side. On the Steam Machine, since it's a computer, I'd imagine most people will be using it more. The next bug fix is for people with huge libraries, and I talked about this when it released into beta. I was like, I kind of feel bad admitting that I have over 1,000 games, but some of you in the comments were like, that's nothing. And then I talked to Carrie from the Fox, who has over 8,000 games. So actually, instead of feeling bad, it looks like I have to pump my numbers up. So people who have big libraries were running into this issue where games, when they would go to play them, would say not valid, even if they were downloaded to the Steam Deck. Like if you went into settings, storage, you could see the game was fully downloaded, but if you tried to launch it, it wouldn't work. That's exactly what they fixed with this update. It was in beta for about a month, and now it's in the official release, so it should work for all of you people with huge libraries out there. They also fixed a bug related to download. So the way it's set up right now is the queued section is just going to download. So like when one download finishes, the next one will start. Then they're scheduled. So like at a certain time every day, all of those updates will download. And then for games you haven't played in a while, those go into unscheduled. And they had a bug where the update would fail if you moved it from either scheduled or unscheduled up to queued. That's been fixed. This was affecting me on Windows. It was affecting me on my SteamOS PC. It was affecting me on my Steam Deck. So I'm really glad they fixed that. I went and tested it and it all works now. I don't know how long this was a bug, but it's nice to see it fixed regardless. Now we're getting into one that I'm really happy about, which should fix the verification system after some time. You can now attach your hardware specs when you review a game, which is great for people going to look to see if a game is good on Steam Deck. They already had a little flare that would say majority time played on Steam Deck, but now you'll be able to see if someone was on the Steam Deck based on their hardware specs, or if you've got a gaming PC, you can look for someone with a similar rig to yours, look for their review, and then they'll point out any issues they had with performance, hopefully, and you can see whether or not a game is worth spending your hard-earned money on. I love stuff like this. I wanted to get so granular where you can filter it, like you can go to filter, upload your hardware specs, and then have reviews that are only from people with similar specs to yours. I love data like that because it just saves you so much time, because you can get a general feel for a game's quality, because if it doesn't run on like a 5080 PC, it's probably not going to run on yours, and it works and vice versa, where like if it runs really well on the Steam Deck, you can bet it's going to run on a 5080 PC, right? But you know, it's still good to have granular data that's more relevant to the build you currently have. So I love this update. I'm glad it wasn't in beta that long. I think it was only in beta for a couple of of weeks. And just so you guys know, I do breakdowns for all the beta updates and stable updates, so if you're new to the channel, help me out and subscribe. And branching off from that is a huge feature that I'm really excited about. So you can opt into this. It's currently in beta and focused on SteamOS. I would guess it's going to come to Windows 11 later, but what it is allowing Steam to see your hardware specs and also the frame rate data of a game you're playing. So like if you're playing, I don't know, Resident Evil Requiem, and you get to a spot where, you know, you're dropping frames left and right, Valve will be able to see that data and they can either share it with Capcom, or if it's an issue with Proton that they can easily fix, they'll update Proton immediately, hopefully, and fix that game's performance for you and everyone else playing on Steam Deck or with a similar rig to yours. I love this because over the past few years, PC performance has just gotten really bad with certain games, like anything AAA, which is funny because those are the most expensive games that are supposed to be the highest quality. It's kind of inverted now. And now when you play an indie game, you expect a finished product with refined gameplay. It's crazy how things have kind of flipped on their head, but like, yeah, it sucks that Valve has to go in and do this stuff, but it's really cool to see them doing it because I don't think PlayStation does it, I don't think Xbox does it, and I know Nintendo doesn't do it. So like anything with frame rate, I'm glad to see Valve jumping on board because they come in fast with fixes for stuff like this. And the final branch of this section is great as well. So you know when you're on your Steam Deck and you go to a game's like play page, so like you click on the game and then there's a page that shows the achievements and the play button and everything, sometimes you'll see a little notification that's like, this game is marked verified on Steam Deck. Would you rate it verified on Steam Deck? And you can click yes or no. They've now added the option to tell them why. So like a game like, I don't know, The Last of Us Part 1, that's the one I always go back to. You have to run it at the absolute lowest settings to get a somewhat stable 30 FPS, and it's listed as verified. So now when you click no as to why it should be verified, you can tell them why. I'd like to see this extended out for games that aren't verified or are listed as playable that should be verified. Put it there for everything. Like give me that notification that's like, this game isn't verified or this game is listed as playable. And let me tell you games that should be verified that the developers aren't going out of their way to submit. If a game is listed as playable, I want to be able to tell you why it should or shouldn't be verified or even playable. Huge shout out to Valve for those 3 updates. I think they're going to help us out a lot in the future. This one's definitely getting ready for Steam Machine. So you know when you're on the home screen and you can see all your recently played games, it's going to get the highest resolution image possible. That's great because with my SteamOS PC that's back there in the living room, when I play on the TV, sometimes with older games, it'll use like a 100p image and it just doesn't look premium, right? Like you want it to look really good on your TV, especially if you have a big, nice TV. So when people come over, you can show them. Nothing makes it feel more budget than seeing a low res image. So I'm glad it's always going to grab the highest resolution image available on both Steam Deck and Steam Machine. Great update overall. Going back to people with big libraries on Steam, they fixed an issue where it wouldn't install a game, even if you got past that not valid warning that would show up sometimes and you could install the game. Sometimes the install would just never start, so they fixed that. And since NextFest has become so awesome, they've been giving demos some love. So now when a demo has an expiration date, if it's past that expiration date and it's still on your SSD, instead of seeing a play button that won't work, you'll see an uninstall button that's like, hey, this demo is not playable anymore, just uninstall it and get that space back. And finally, they updated it so that demos actually moved to the top of recently played. They didn't used to do that before. They would just stay in your library and you'd have to go find them. So if you go back to a demo a lot, like Vampire Crawlers or Dungeons of Dusk, because those are huge portions of the games, they'll now move to the top of your recently played. I thought it was weird that we hadn't gotten a big stable update in a while. We've been getting a lot of betas, but now I see why. We got so many bug fixes and features with this one that it's nice to see. I like when Valve drops these big updates for SteamOS because it gives me hope that we'll see the Steam Machine soon, because they're actively working on stuff that will make the experience better on day one. It looks like we're not going to have the same problem as Steam Deck where, you know, it was good at launch, but it took them a few months of big updates to actually get it to the great state it's in now. Very appreciative of this. Keep up the great work, Valve. And that brings me to the second news story here, which is some settings for Resident Evil Requiem and some thoughts on how it runs on Steam Deck. I mean, I really have no complaints, right? Like, of course, I'd love to have DLSS like the Switch 2 instead of FSR 3 because it doesn't look that good. I know you can inject FSR 4 pretty easily without even using Decky, but it just doesn't run as well if you use FSR 4, even with the patch they put out that improved performance. So I don't know. I wish they had a better option like XeSS or something like that. Or if someone could hack the light mode of DLSS that the Switch 2 is using and get it working on SteamOS, that would be awesome as well. That's really my only gripe because this game runs really well. And I tested these settings throughout my entire second playthrough of the game and it ran pretty dang well. So overall, great job, Capcom. Texture should be set at low because while it can kind of handle medium, it introduces stuttering when you move between levels. So like if you don't want any stuttering, set it to low. Texture filtering, however, can either be set to medium or high. Medium is better for 40 FPS, high is better for 30. Mesh quality should be set to low. I gotta be honest, don't even know what this does because I can't tell the difference between medium or low on the Steam Deck. So just set it to low because the performance is much better. Screen space reflections in the RE engine, you'd always just default to turning those off up until this game because it doesn't have any performance impact and it is noticeable between on or off. Like in the older Resident Evils, like 7, you can definitely keep it on, but as you move up to like Village or 4 Remake, you know, you have to turn it off. So it's nice to see they've optimized that. Subsurface scattering was another one that had issues in the RE engine, but that's been fixed as well. So you can set it to low. Depth of field is on or off depending on your taste. It doesn't really matter for performance at all. So like I left it on and it was fine. FSR 3 on a TV looks like shit if I'm being honest, even at ultra quality, but on the Steam Deck, it's fine. If you want 40, set it to balanced. If you want 30, set it to quality. I know everyone hates how I say balanced, but it's like my mix of Valley Girl accent from my 10 years in LA and my Michigan accent. I'm sorry, I say balanced weird, I guess. Particle lighting you can leave on. Volumetric fog, set it to lowest for 40, low for 30. Lens dirt is up to your taste as well. They have it on by default, so I just left it on. Shadow quality, of course, you have to set to low. Ambient occlusion, leave it off for 40, low for 30. And finally, set the VFX quality to low. And yeah, you'll get a pretty much locked 30 FPS throughout the entire game. There's some sections in Raccoon City where you'll see it fluctuate a little bit, but it always settles out at 30. I can't believe how well this game runs. Like I play all the Resident Evil games all the time, and there are flashbacks in the game to RE2 Remake. In my mind, they look similar, but when you see them in stark contrast like that, it's like, man, they've really upgraded the RE engine, and I hope they get it working better for their open world games like Monster Hunter Wilds and Dragon's Dogma 2, but the vast majority of the RE engine games run great, and there's 2 coming out very soon. You've got Monster Hunter Stories 3, which runs great on the Steam Deck, and Pragmata, which also runs great on Steam Deck based on its 2 demos. When it comes to Resident Evil Requiem, if you've got a better PC and you bought it on PC, I would recommend your first playthrough be on like the best possible PC you have because this game graphically looks really good, and also it benefits from 60 FPS. But if you're playing how I did, where you do the first playthrough on PC all maxed out, and then for the second playthrough where you're cleaning up the challenges to get to 100%, then you can do that on the Steam Deck because the story, while amazing, in my opinion at least, I love Resident Evil because the heroes always win. You know, once you've seen it, you kind of know what's going on. So like if you're not paying attention to the story and you just want to clean up challenges, I think it's a great game on the Steam Deck. I have every Resident Evil downloaded on my Steam Deck, going all the way back to Code Veronica. That's probably the biggest series on Steam Deck, and I just love how well it runs. The worst performing game in the entire thing is RE4 Remake. You can kind of squeeze out a hard lock 30 FPS, but that's a much bigger game than Requiem. So overall, just really happy with this game. I have not been obsessed with the game like this in a long time. Overall, this is one of my favorite games ever. It's definitely going to be in the top 10. I think I've sat with it long enough to determine that. This is one of those games where even after I 100% it, I know in like a year or a couple of years, I'm going to be like, man, I just want to do a quick playthrough of Resident Evil Requiem. And that's how I know it's a really good game. If you skipped it, you should definitely grab it. If you want to stay up to date on the story, get RE2 Remake, RE4 Remake, and then you'll be fine for Resident Evil Requiem. There is some lore from 7 and 8, but like you could read a Wikipedia. I love 7 and 8. 8 not as much as 7, but overall any game in the series I think is good. Even RE3 Remake, I think it gets way too bad of a rap. Resident Evil is and always has been my favorite series, and I hope it always will be. I just love what Capcom is doing. So yeah, I wanted to do a full settings breakdown for a video here on the channel. If you want to see more, let me know down in the comments below. But as always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.